Dear students, how are you doing? Once again, you're meeting Mr. Obed in CME. You're mostly welcome. During the previous lesson, we discussed about practices that influence and motivate people to abstain from dangerous activities. Now, imagine you have engaged yourself in such dangerous activities and now you're already in problems. If you're in that position, you automatically need to meet a counselor. That is to say, you have to get counseling services. Now, that's what we're going to discuss this time round, seeking for counseling services when necessary. First of all, you need to understand what it means by counseling. Of course, it is something that we have been talking every now and then because you use it in your daily life. But what does it mean by counseling, really? Counseling is a professional advice given to a person with problems. When I say professional, it means it is given by a person who is trained on psychological matters, so that person is in a position to help you to sort out your problems. But sometimes you see what you hear, maybe people telling you, giving you some pieces of advice. The opinions that you get from people is just an advice. So that can be given by any other person. But counseling has to be done by a professional person, that is a counselor. So, just like I have said, this is a professional advice, so I can say counseling is a professional advice given to a person. It's a professional advice given to a person with problems. You know, if you have met with challenges in life and you think that whatever you have come across will affect you or has affected you in one way or another, and you think you cannot move on with your life, it means you need help. And of course, help can be given by people around you, your family members, your teachers, but your parents as well. But you may need counseling services. You may need to meet a professional who will help you to sort out your problems. Now, counseling is a process of assisting and guiding clients. You know, there are people, because I have said a counselor is a professional person, is a person who is well trained about giving advice to people, helping out people with problems. So those people who do go to the counselor, they are clients. So this service is given to the clients by a counselor, and seeking for advice is very important, especially when you are in problems, because this is a central pillar to effective leadership and decision making. sometimes you may not be able to make a decision, you may not be able to sort out things well just because you're in problems. So you need somebody who will give you a second hand that you may be able to make it. Now, what are the problems or challenges that may force a person to look for counseling services? So, what problems may force you to look for counseling services? Why should you look for counseling services? You know, sometimes you might be feeling that you're alone, and maybe you might feel that you are isolated by people that you love, people that have always been around you. And maybe you feel like you're misunderstood or isolated by close friends or family in such a way that it creates stress in your brain, and little by little you feel worthless. When you're in such circumstance, you need counseling services. So that's why I'm saying, what problems may force you to look for counseling services? Or why should a person look for counseling services? Now, if you have that feeling that you are isolated, let's say feeling isolated by your beloved ones. You know, just take an example of your family members, your brothers, your sisters, your parents. They have always been close to you. They have been so good to you. But it comes this time that they don't understand you. You see, you feel like isolated. So obviously, you will feel that you are just unworthy, and you may need counseling services, because if not, you might end up in stress, you might end up in depression. But sometimes I have ever seen this, and you see, sometimes people do come and they say, teacher, you know, somebody has bullied me and all that. So when you feel bullied, let's say you're being bullied, by your fellows, you may not have that confidence. So when you lose confidence, you lose also strength of doing your work. So you may need somebody to counsel you so that can boost up your confidence. Otherwise, you may end up doing work insufficiently. You may not be able to do work as it is required, just because you feel that you are some kind of disregarded, or you're not valued by your fellows. So if you are in that position, you need counseling services. You will have to speak it out so that somebody can help you out. But sometimes, let's say you are denied your basic rights, your basic human rights. So denial of basic human rights. Denial of basic human rights. Okay, as children, you have got right to food, you have got right to education, you have got right to this and that. And knowing that this is your right and it is denied by your parents or your teachers or your friends, you will not feel good. So at the end of the day, you feel like, oh no, I think I'm not worth living. And if that happens, I'm telling you, you will not be able to produce. You may not perform well in your studies. You may not perform well in your daily activities. So you may need counseling services. Otherwise, you will become unproductive. And somebody might be wondering, why does this boy or this girl drop little by little in his or her studies? But the reason could be denial of basic human rights, of which this can happen. It can be caused by either parents or anybody around you. But sometimes, if you feel like you're not loved or you're not cared about, you may have that bad feeling in you, something that may make your mind corrupt. At the end of the day, you may not make it as it is required. So the feeling of not being loved by your fellows, by your close people, or you're not cared about, I'm telling you, it may just make you lose confidence little by little, and in the end, people may forget you. Suffering from serious disease. Sometimes people do suffer from serious diseases. Suffering from serious disease. Suffering from serious disease. I have ever come across people who fall sick and they just gave up in their lives. Somebody feels like, no, I'm not worth living. Somebody feels like I should just die. Now, when you meet with such kind of a person, you don't have to show your teeth laughing. No, it is high time to help out, because that person has just given up completely, doesn't think about the importance of living. Somebody is just thinking about dying. Now, such kind of a person need to meet with a counselor. Counseling service has to be provided to that particular person. Otherwise, you may end up losing that person. But one more, you have ever heard about our sisters who probably got pregnant at their tender ages, at the young age, so early pregnancy. Early pregnancy. Sometimes, you see, of course, we don't encourage that to happen to students, but anyway, it has been happening that some students do get pregnant. But how can you help a person who is in this circumstance? It is part of life, though we don't encourage it, and I don't think if that will be entertained by any parent. But if it happens, this person, this girl should not be isolated, should not be beaten, should not be harassed by anybody. But this person really need help from a counselor. So it is high time for everybody to understand that when one is in problem, in such a way that one is even thinking about hanging him or herself, it is the right time for that person to look for help. And when you get that help, the help comes from a counselor. If you are reading a Bible, somewhere it is written, I think it was David who was speaking somewhere, and he was like, where does my help come from? And he says, my help comes from the Lord. Now, I know you might be a good Christian or a good Muslim, and of course you can pray about it. You can pray, you can just pray about it. But you really need a person who is trained that will help you to sort out your problems. Otherwise, you may end up in a bad way, and that will never be good for us. Lastly, is about alcoholism and drug abuse. Alcoholism and the drug abuse. You might have come across people, let's say your brothers or relatives, who have been in alcohol and the drug addiction. These people, they really need help somewhere. Now, you see, when you talk to them, you may try to blame them. You can complain, you can blame them, but it's not the right time for us to blame. No, we can give a piece of advice that these people should see a counselor. I'm telling you, one might be helped by a counselor, and you find somebody is out of problems. Now, why is it important for us to look for counseling services? We have been learning about seeking for counseling services, and that if you're in problems, like we have analyzed here, that you need counseling services. But why is it important then? Maybe we can just try to point out some few important things here that a person who has been in this circumstance may benefit from counseling services. So just give me a moment to wrap the blackboard. The whiteboard, I mean. I'm used to blackboard. Why is it important to look for counseling services? You need to understand that it is very important to seek for help and advice when you have a problem that you cannot solve on your own. You know, sometimes that's why it is very important to, even when you are in the classroom, you are schooling, you are studying, you need a person around you that at least sometimes you can have a piece of advice, because it happens that sometimes you cannot make it on your own. So you really need this counseling service. But let me remind you once again that counseling service is conducted by a counselor. But that does not necessarily mean that you can't be helped by your family members, including your brothers, sisters, your parents. That does not mean that you cannot be helped by your teachers. No. But if you think you are in a serious problem that you cannot share with your parents, that you cannot share, I do understand very well that sometimes we might be in a position not allowing us to share with the teachers or to share with our family members, but you feel that you're carrying a burden, so you obviously need a counselor. Now, whenever you seek for counseling services, it will help you to sort out the following things. Number one, just like I said before, if you're in problem, you will lose confidence. Now, for you to regain your confidence, you need counseling service. So, one of the things that you will sort out is that lack of confidence. That is to say, you will increase your confidence by seeking for counseling services. So, number one is increasing your confidence. Increasing your confidence. You know, confidence is being built, but confidence can also be ruined. Standing before the class, you know, sometimes it looks like a very difficult thing. It is not difficult. You can just practice it little by little, and you can be able to stand before the classroom. But listen to me very carefully and attentively. Your confidence might be ruined. Think about a person who has been bullied every now and then, and a person who has come to a point of thinking that is just worthless. This person cannot be standing before the class, cannot be standing before the audience and speak. No, that cannot happen. But by the time this person start meeting a counselor and get a piece of advice, and little by little is regaining the confidence, at the end of the day you find one is able to make it just because confidence has increased. So meeting a counselor will help you to increase your confidence. But when you meet a counselor, you will be in a position to get good or sound advice. To get sound advice. I wonder whether you look for advice from every single person. As for me, I think I cannot do that. You might have specific people that you trust, your best friends, and the people that you trust that can give you some pieces of advice of which you believe that it's a good piece of advice. Otherwise, you cannot just go to every single person. You go to this, you go to that. No. You only have to have people that you can trust, that every single moment you have a problem, you think it's a serious problem, then you look for them. You know, here I'm talking about problems that you cannot sort on your own, because it happens sometimes. I'm not talking about some simple things. There are things that you can sort on your own, but when you are in a serious problem, you will need another person at least to help you to digest it and give you a good piece of advice that you may come out of the problem, or you may come out of the challenge that you're facing. So, meeting a counselor, because a counselor is a professional, it means you will be in a good position to get sound advice. So you will get something that will really help you to move on in your life. And if you want to make decisions, I will say sound decisions, making decisions. You may also need to meet a counselor. Sometimes it is hard. Let me tell you something. Government leaders, especially if you're talking about let's say, the president of our country, or a president of any country, US, UK, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, and so on. These people, they don't do things on their own. There are people, okay, of course I can't call them counselors. Anyway, maybe still, okay, you can still call them counselors, but there are people who are well specialized in that area of counseling. So every time they want to make decisions, they will consult them. They will ask, how do you see this? What if I do this thing in this particular way? So they can give them a piece of advice that every person in the country, when look at it, will say, yes, this is the right decision. It doesn't just come anyhow. They do look for people who are trained. So what about you? Won't you look for such kind of people, and especially when you want to make serious decisions in your life? I will suggest that you look for such people. But you also need to understand that sometimes we meet with very serious challenges in our lives. It could be social challenge, it could be financial challenge, it could be a relationship, and so on. But you need somebody to advise you in a good way. Now, I will give you some few examples. For example, I said social challenge, I said financial challenge, relationship, and so on. Take an example. I know it has been happening even in the classroom here, because I sometimes meet across letters that you write to one another, and letters that I received recently, somebody was like, I do not want to remain your best friend. You have what you call BFF. You say best friend forever. Now, you see, it is not easy when you lose your friend. Somebody that has been very close to you for a long period of time says, hey, no more friendship. You find somebody is losing confidence and dropping in school. But why? Just because somebody has maybe isolated him or her. So that's to do with relationship. Think about people who are in marriage. This has been happening, and it has happened to so many people. Yeah, people do break up. Do you agree with me? The answer is yes. Now, in case of this breakup, of course, it is a challenge. In case of breakup, of course, this does affect our lives. It does affect our social, it does affect our financial life, it does affect everything in life. It does happen. But you just have to believe that you can make it no matter what. Now, when it comes to finance, think about companies. You see, people who have been running a certain business, for example, they meet some financial challenges whereby money is becoming a problem. There is maybe a breakdown somewhere and the company is real demanding. In the end of the day, they will need support somewhere, otherwise they may not be able to move on. So in all these areas, you obviously need to meet a counselor, otherwise you may not make it, you may not be able to carry on. So it is very important for us to see or to seek counseling services where it is necessary. So in today's lesson, we have been looking about the counseling services. We have been looking upon reasons as to why people look for counseling services. But we have also looked upon the importance or the necessity of counseling services. So just to wind up, we need to understand that counseling services are provided to people who are in problems, people who need to come out of problems. So it is very important that you understand every time you are in problem, you have to look for the right people to help you to sort it out, because we do not want to lose you. You do not have to give up in life. You do not have to, let's say you have failed. I got this news some few years back whereby a certain student had failed several times, I think 4 times, just recited the form for exam, the first time, the second time, the third time, the fourth time, she failed again and she decided to hang herself. So she ended up her life. But if this girl had met a counselor, she would be in a good position to carry on with her life, believing that it is not the end of life to fail in exams. So it is very important that we understand this and we keep it in mind every time, that still there is hope where things are tough. This will be the end of our lesson. I hope it has been a good lesson as far as it does speak about things that we come across every single day of our lives, and that we are now in a good position to carry on in our lives no matter what we come across. Let me wish you a nice time and may God bless you. Bye-bye.